I was living a quiet life in an old house overlooking a peaceful street. I didn't know my neighbors well as they were reclusive and rarely left their homes. One night, I woke up to the sound of faint screaming coming from the neighbor's house. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just a cat or a pet. But the screaming continued, becoming clearer and louder. I felt scared and worried, and decided to check it out. I got out of bed and approached the window overlooking the neighbor's house. I tried to see what was going on, but the house was dark. Suddenly, a faint light caught my attention, seeping from under the neighbor's door. I moved closer to the window and peered through a small gap in the curtain. What I saw made my blood run cold. I saw a strange man with a pale face and red eyes holding a woman tightly and threatening her with a sharp rod. The woman's screams were terrifying, and her pleas to the man were futile. I felt terrified and helpless, not knowing what to do. I couldn't call the police as the phone line was down. I felt powerless to help the poor woman. Suddenly, an idea flashed in my mind. I remembered that I had an old hammer in the attic. I grabbed the hammer and went downstairs. I cautiously sneaked into the neighbor's house through an open window on the ground floor. It was pitch dark inside, but I could hear the sounds of screaming and threats coming from upstairs. I climbed the stairs slowly and carefully, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the upper floor and saw the door to the room was closed. I raised the hammer high and struck the door forcefully. The door shook violently, and I heard the strange man scream in pain. I gathered all my strength and hit the door again and again. Finally, the door collapsed and fell to the ground. I quickly entered the room and saw the woman lying unconscious on the floor. The strange man was standing in the corner of the room, holding the rod in his hand. The strange man looked at me with a frightening glare and tried to attack me. But I struck him on the head with the hammer, and he fell to the ground, unconscious. I immediately called the police, and they arrived within minutes. They arrested the strange man and took the woman to the hospital. I never found out what happened to that woman, nor could I understand the strange man's motive for his actions. But I will never forget that night. In an old and quiet neighborhood, an elderly man named Robert lived with his wife, Maria. Robert was a kind and generous man who loved helping people and sharing in their joys and sorrows. However, luck was not on Robert's side when it came to his neighbors, as he lived next to a strange man named Jimmy. Jimmy was a domineering and grumpy man who always caused trouble and disturbed the neighbors' peace. The conflicts between Robert and Jimmy started over trivial matters, such as loud music or barking dogs. But these conflicts quickly escalated and turned into an open feud between the neighbors. Jimmy always tried to provoke Robert and his wife by throwing garbage in front of their house, playing loud music, and disturbing their pets. Robert repeatedly tried to talk to Jimmy and resolve the issues amicably, but Jimmy was not willing to compromise or forgive. Things got worse when Jimmy began to exhibit strange and frightening behaviors. He would talk loudly to himself and cast suspicious glances at the neighbors. One night, Robert woke up to the sound of terrifying screams coming from Jimmy's house. Robert went to check on the situation and found Jimmy's front door open and the lights off. Robert cautiously entered the house and was shocked by a horrifying sight. Jimmy was standing in the middle of the room, holding a sharp screwdriver and waving it in the air. Jimmy looked at Robert with a crazy gaze and shouted loudly, "You will pay for what you've done." Robert feared for his life and tried to flee the house, but Jimmy chased him and attempted to stab him. Fortunately, Robert managed to escape from Jimmy's house and called the police. The police arrived quickly and arrested Jimmy. After the investigation, it was revealed that Jimmy was suffering from a severe mental illness. He was sent to a mental hospital for treatment. Robert and his wife lived peacefully after that, but they never forgot that terrifying night and what happened with their domineering and strange neighbor. Before we continue, if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and share the video so we can continue creating more stories. In a quiet neighborhood, a peaceful family consisting of a husband, wife, and their 2 young daughters lived a calm and happy life, free from any worries or fears. One stormy, dark night, while the family was sleeping, the older daughter, Reem, woke up to a strange sound. She cautiously got out of bed and tiptoed towards the source of the noise. Through a small crack in her bedroom door, she saw a faint light seeping from the living room. Fear gripped her, but her curiosity pushed her to investigate further. As she approached the living room door, she suddenly heard the sound of breaking glass. Her heart trembled, and she began to sweat from the intense fear. Reem realized that a thief had broken into the neighbor's house, so she quickly ran to her parents' room to wake them up. Her father woke up to Reem's screams and immediately understood what was happening. He grabbed his gun, hidden under the bed, and went with Reem to check on the situation while the mother tried to calm their younger daughter and keep her away from danger. The father carefully snuck towards the neighbor's house. Suddenly, the thief emerged from the darkness, holding a shiny knife. The father shouted, "Don't move," but the thief charged at him without hesitation. In that moment, the father had no choice but to fire his gun. The bullet hit the thief in the shoulder, causing him to fall to the ground, screaming in pain. The father took advantage of the moment to subdue and restrain the thief. The wife called the police, who arrived within minutes. The thief was arrested and taken to the hospital for treatment. The family, on the other hand, had experienced a night of true terror that they would never forget. On a dark and stormy night, a dangerous patient escaped from the Hope Mental Health Center. His name was Majid, and he suffered from severe psychological disorders that made him see the world as a place full of enemies and conspiracies. Majid managed to escape from the center after attacking a guard and stealing his weapon. He dashed like a wild beast towards our quiet street, searching for a new victim. That night, I was living with my family in our modest home, completely unaware of the approaching disaster. While we were deeply asleep, Majid was sneaking towards our house, determined to turn our night into a real nightmare. I woke up to a strange sound, like a muffled scream. I cautiously got out of bed and tiptoed towards the source of the sound. Through a small crack in my bedroom door, I saw a faint light seeping from the window of our neighbor's house. Fear gripped me, but my curiosity pushed me to investigate further. I approached the window, and suddenly, I saw a strange person roaming inside the house. He was wearing tattered clothes, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes were filled with madness. At that moment, I immediately realized that this person was not ordinary and could pose a threat to my family. I quickly ran to my parents' room to wake them up. My father woke up to my screams and immediately understood that something was wrong. He grabbed his gun, hidden under the bed, and went with me to check on the situation, while my mother tried to calm my younger sister and keep her away from danger. My father cautiously snuck towards our neighbor's house, and suddenly, the strange person emerged from the darkness, holding a shiny knife. My father shouted, "Don't move," but the stranger charged at him without hesitation. At that moment, my father had no choice but to shoot. The bullet hit the stranger in the shoulder, causing him to fall to the ground, screaming in pain. My father took advantage of the moment to subdue and restrain the stranger. My mother called the police, who arrived within minutes. The stranger was arrested and taken to the hospital for treatment. It turned out that he was Majid, the escaped patient from the Hope Mental Health Center. Our family suffered severe psychological trauma after the incident, especially after learning that the stranger was a dangerous mentally ill patient. We had to undergo psychological treatment to help us overcome this horrifying experience. I still remember that terrifying night to this day. It taught me an important lesson about the importance of following safety measures and being aware of dangers, especially in a street known for its bad reputation. I also realized that mental illness is a serious issue that should not be underestimated.